So once you've developed the concept, built out the data model, created the user interface, and configured your automations, you're ready to test and see how all of these pieces are working together. Now, it would be pretty impressive if all of this just worked and came together on the first try without any need to troubleshoot for errors. But software development, like prompting, is iterative. So the next step that we need to do before getting our agent live with real data is to work out any errors that are happening with our workflows. Any type of workflow can have errors, whether it uses artificial intelligence or integrations or not, and Glide surfaces these errors in a few different ways. If you have error notifications turned on, you'll receive an email from Glide every time an error happens. This email will tell you which app had the error, which workflow within that app didn't fully execute, and some more details about what the error was. You can also view any errors by opening the Glide Builder and going to the workflow editor. Workflows that are currently not running as expected will show this triangle symbol in red. Clicking this opens the run history for that workflow, and here the troubleshooting varies slightly if you have a workflow with loops or without. If you have a workflow without loops, you can see the error history on the right side here. Clicking any of these red logs will open the details of that run. The exact step that failed is highlighted in red, and the error message is here. Let's take a closer look at what went wrong here. So the step that failed was a trigger webhook action. If we click these curly brackets on the right, we can see what data was sent and failed to go through. We've also got the error message, webhook request failed, only absolute URLs are supported. Now, you might know what this error message means, and therefore that's enough information for you to go and fix the issue. But if you aren't sure, like what's an absolute URL anyway, then you can easily find out. We recommend just Googling the exact error message, or if needed, you can paste it into ChatGPT with context. This is because most error messages on workflows are actually universal codes used across software development. When we search for this error, for example, we can see that URLs must include the protocol like HTTPS and the domain, and that's what's missing in our URL. So it's required, and this is why this step is failing. Now, clicking back into the configuration of this step, we can see that the URL field must be the source of the problem. What I have here is just the domain, and that's actually not a full webhook endpoint URL. So to fix the issue, I need to go to find the correct webhook endpoint URL and add it to this field. And my new value will save automatically, and I can test my solution by clicking the Run button at the top of the workflow editor. If the workflow fails again, I'll immediately get a red error message down below, as well as an email that we saw before. If it does work, the run will appear in the run history log on the right without any red errors. Now let's look at an example with loops. Workflows with loops are often made up of more steps, generally speaking, and definitely run multiple times. So it's possible that a loop could run several times successfully before actually encountering an error. And so the troubleshooting screen, the debugging screen, works a little differently here. Let's look at the workflow for archiving orders that we talked about in the loops lesson. It has the red error symbol. If we click into any of the previous runs with an error, our screen will change to the view for troubleshooting loops. Here, little numbers appear on the upper right of every step. This number is how many times that step ran in the workflow. The first 5 steps only ran once, and that makes sense because these steps are not in a loop. Looking at the looped steps, we can see how many times each of those steps ran. If we click on any step, the log on the right changes to show a record for each run of that step. Now, none of these steps themselves has an error, so let's go back to the Edit Workflows view and look at the error message again. The error is that the workflow tried to run more than 2,000 steps. So none of the steps themselves failed to run, but the workflow hit the limit of total number of steps that are allowed to run. So to fix this, we can add a limit that makes the loop run fewer steps and then run the loop more frequently so it checks all of our relevant data. Testing is really where everything starts to come together. It's how you move from a prototype to a reliable product. If you're like me, you might be frustrated sometimes by this stage of building, but remember, errors aren't setbacks, they're signals helping you refine and really strengthen your agent before it goes live.